Monday morning. This is Good Morning Transfers. Plenty of talking points as we start the new week with Manchester United still in talks over signing Bruno Fernandes. And will we see them enter the loan market this January? As you can see, Chris Boyd joins the transfer team this morning as well. Make sure you get in touch. Use that hashtag Transfer Talk, and there are plenty of ways to get involved.
We'll look at the treatment table from the weekend. Who came off injured and how might it affect January plans?
Antonio Conte is trying his best to get the band back together. We have the latest on Inter's newest interest in another Chelsea player.
We'll also have news from Arsenal as Mikel Arteta sounds like he's sent a message to the Arsenal board.
Just a reminder, you can download the latest episode of the Transfer Talk podcast right now. It's available on iTunes, Spreaker, as well as the Sky Sports website. But let's start this morning with the very latest on the Bruno Fernandes situation. I promise I didn't copy and paste this script from last week. We expect talks to resume between United and Sporting Lisbon this week. And Dave, this one is becoming pretty protracted. What is the latest?
It is. I think there's a bit of frustration within the Manchester United fan base, isn't there? Not only at the pace of this deal, but seemingly the goalposts may have been starting to move over the last 48 hours over the weekend. The bottom line is there's a willingness from all parties to get this deal done between Sporting Lisbon and Manchester United for the Portugal international midfielder. Talks are expected to resume between the clubs this coming week. The Sporting head coach, Silas, has said that Fernandes deserves to play in the Premier League and that the player has made his feelings known to the Sporting hierarchy as well. A lot of the noise around this transfer has come from the Portuguese side, and there are further reports from Portugal that claim the deal is in the balance. However, we have been told here at Sky Sports News as well to expect anything. So that's the deal from this side of the pond, and then also over in Portugal as well. Now, we reported on Friday that a deal worth £60 million was close. That was 43 million up front, 17 million in add-ons. However, it now seems that Sporting aren't particularly happy with the structure of the deal and may want more money up front now. Agents' fees may have complicated the deal somewhat in that situation as well. There was a strong feeling that Fernandes had played his final game for the club on Friday against Benfica. As it stands, though, he is in the squad for the game against Braga in the Portuguese League Cup semi-final. That's happening on Tuesday.
So, Dave, you're saying there Fernandes has made his feelings known. He wants a move. And, Chris, I just wonder about getting your perspective on things. In terms of transfers, I don't know if you're in your own career, did you just kind of keep out of it, let people get on with it, or were you quite vocal on this is where I want to go?
Well, I think we spoke about it last week as well. You know, as a football player, you want to just get your head down and concentrate on your football, do the best you possibly can. There is no doubt that you leave it to the specialists in that department, the agents and stuff like that, but it does seem as if it's starting to get a little bit messy, and the goalposts have been moved in terms of the money as you speak about there. But listen, the player cannot get involved in that. He will have instructed his agent where he wants to go. He's probably spoke to Sporting Lisbon as well and told them he wants to be a Manchester United player. So it could end up getting messy, and I think that this is where a lot of the things it leaves a sour taste in a lot of clubs, our fans especially, when players are forced into saying they want to leave when they don't want to. The clubs maybe messing around wanting more money and stuff like that. Get the deal done, and it's an outstanding amount of money. Manchester United needs someone like him in, and you'd expect the deal to get done, but once the agents and that start to try to get their cut and stuff like that as well, it could end up messy.
You say, Chris, that it's an outstanding amount of money, but 43 out of 60 million up front is actually quite a lot in a modern day transfer. So that would suggest to me it's more the agent's cut and the agent side of things. Obviously, you were saying there, Dave, that they felt that maybe wasn't enough of the 60, but that does seem quite a lot to pay 43 of 60.
We're all in the wrong game then, we should get into the agency business.
Absolutely. We did think he played his last game in the Lisbon derby, but Dave, again, you mentioned that he is in that squad for tomorrow's game. We can have a look at his stats from that game that he played in on Friday. This was 90 minutes, no goals, no shots. He did create 3 chances, 41 passes, 75.6% pass completion. And Keith, this probably doesn't tell the full story of just what kind of player Fernandes is and the impact he would make at United.
Well, you say no goals there at the weekend, but the one thing he has done for Sporting Lisbon is he scored goals. I think he has a goal every second game as a midfielder, or very close to that. And when you look at that Manchester United team, that is what they need now. Take away the situation with Rashford. They needed a striker before then, but what they need is goals from midfield. How many goals do you think have been scored by midfielders at Manchester United this season?
Depends. Yeah.
How many do you think have been scored in the Premier League by Manchester United midfielders this season?
I would not classify Martial as midfield.
No, just he's a forward. How many do you think?
I would say probably Pereira's probably scored maybe 1 or 2.
4. So 4 goals.
Oh, we never even got a chance to answer
Yeah,
it.
give us a chance.
You were taking too long.
I was going to say 4. I was giving you a head.
You were taking too long. 4 goals, 3 from McTominay. So
Not bad for a Scotsman.
Yeah, not bad. So they clearly need goals in there. He has a goal every second game for Sporting Lisbon.
But it's a big step up from the Portuguese League to the Premier League.
That's true. And as well, you do have to kind of look at the difference in standard too. He's not going to get as much time in this league as he would get in the Portuguese league. Probably not as much respect either. But because I just want to ask you, do you feel like it's distracting him at any point? If he's obviously probably made his intentions clear, as you said earlier. Do you feel like it's going to distract him away from his job and his duty right now?
Probably the most talked about person this window is Christian Eriksen, and it's, there's no doubt there's something distracted him. Because I don't think his performances have been at the level of what we've been used to. But I've seen some of the Lisbon derby the other night there, and no, I didn't. I didn't. I think he was fine. He was still getting about the pitch and everything, and doing what he does. As I said, when you look at the game the other night, that was supposed to be his farewell, and now all of a sudden it's now Monday morning, nothing's happened. I mean, there was reports that if Sport Lisbon were winning the game, they were going to take him off early to get a standing ovation, but that didn't work out. So there has obviously been some hitch somewhere along the lines with this deal. But it is important that Bruno Fernandes continues to perform at the level he has. That's earned him this. Earned him this move. It's not earned him it yet, but it seems to be close.
You just feel that Manchester United need to add someone now, don't they? After what happened yesterday with the result, obviously the injury to Rashford. I know he doesn't play in the same position, but they need to try and find goals from somewhere. And I just feel that I know. I'm not just saying they need to get anyone. They need to get the right character. Yeah. We heard the guys yesterday speaking about characters, and I think Patrice Evra was very interesting. He said that in the market now, you're probably not going to get someone who's going to come for the badge. They're going to come for the money, and obviously that is the concern. But I just think the situation Manchester United are in, they want to get up into that top 4. The gap is getting a little bit bigger. They need to try and bring someone in now, and they need to take a chance on someone.
And just one final point on Fernandes, I would say. The tail end of last week, we had Gary Cottrell over in Lisbon. He was even saying that there was a slim possibility that Fernandes may even be on a plane over to the UK on Sunday to watch the game at Anfield. And we were hearing at the tail end of last week that the deal was close. Now, it seems actually that we were led to believe that it's not particularly close, but the talks are happening. You wonder whether the only person we haven't really heard from in this situation is the player himself. The fact that the deal
you won't hear from him
was seemingly close and now perhaps not so close, is that the sort of thing that would push a player into saying, come on, let's get this deal done now?
You won't hear from... I mean, if agents and clubs, and the 2 clubs have been speaking up, you ain't going to hear from the player unless he needs to come out. And as I said, that's when it does get nasty. And I want to leave. And then all of a sudden the Sporting Lisbon fans are like, he wants to leave, get him out of the club and everything. The deal, it should be pretty straightforward. If the player wants to go, he's already, told Sporting Lisbon that he wants to go. If that is the case, then get the deal done, because, he's been a top player for them, hence the reason why you're paying, or he's been linked with the moves that he's been linked with, and leave in good terms. And a lot of times that the football clubs want to paint themselves as the good guys in the situation, and the players are left, going away to play with other teams, and all of a sudden, he wanted to leave us and this and that. It's not the case. 9 times out of 10, it's the clubs that are forcing the players in to say, you need to leave, or say transfer request or whatever. So it's yes, the players get the stick, but a lot of it's the clubs.
Well, I think the crucial thing in all of this is what Dave, you said at the start. There's a willingness on both sides to get the deal done, and normally when you hear that, it will get done. But I think they need to have him registered by midday tomorrow if he's to play against Burnley on Tuesday night. You would think that's very unlikely, as it stands.
I think the whole transfer window and everything as well, because of the money that's been spent in England over the last number of years. clubs from foreign countries, they can turn around and say, no, I want this and you're going to have to pay this, especially in this transfer window, because it seems to be, yes, people have got a value on them, but it seems to be overvalued as such for a lot of players. And unfortunately, if you want to get players in, you're going to have to pay over the odds.
Yeah, and Keith, let's just pick up on what you were speaking about a moment ago too with Marcus Rashford, that stress fracture confirmed after the Liverpool defeat. The United boss actually said, this is what he said: if there are the right players there and they fit, we can buy. If there are loans available, that might be possible. So United potentially entering into the loan market. Gary Neville also said after the game yesterday, United have to go into the market. They need someone up there with a physical presence and a bit more maturity. They need another body. And just looking at what Neville said there, I guess the question is, that person he describes, does he actually exist? And might that be the problem, JD?
I mean, I'm not part of the Man United recruitment. I wouldn't want to turn around and say that I am, but I feel like that person does. That person has clearly sat on the market and only has 6 months left on his contract as well. You're talking about maturity, you're talking about physical presence. Edison Cavani, he's a proven winner. He's going to come in with experience already.
Why did they let Lukaku go?
I mean, that is the immediate question. But he was talking about getting somebody in of a similar quality that can turn around and deliver on the same sort of scale, who's scoring goals around the world in different leagues. Edison Cavani is an automatic fit in that Man United mould. Not only is he going to come in with the maturity, but he has the presence as an international player who's won things in other leagues. Like, that is proven right there and then. But a man with only 6 months left on his contract that's not getting into the PSG team at this moment, I'm confused as to why it's not already started, to be honest.
Chris, you mentioned Romelu Lukaku there, and do you not feel, as a striker yourself, do you not feel that he should have been given... I know he wasn't going through a good time, but do you not feel he should have been given a bit longer, and we wouldn't be sitting in this situation if he was still there? He's scoring goals for Inter now.
Hindsight's a great thing. It wasn't really happening for him at United as well, but you could...
But does that mean...
But you could argue the point, was he given a proper opportunity towards the end to turn his Manchester United career around? I think Manchester United have decided to go this way, if they want youngsters in, but as you said, you do need experience around there to help those youngsters. And there's one thing about Romelu Lukaku: he will score goals wherever he is. He's a finisher. He's already showed that in Italy. When you look back, I think Manchester United maybe let him go, thinking they were going to get someone else in. They maybe had a deal close and it didn't really materialise, and that's maybe why they've been left short in that department.
It does seem like Cavani would be a viable option though for United. The PSG sporting director Leonardo was quoted in the Mix Zone last night saying, "We've always said the same thing. We were hoping he would stay with the club. Today he asked to leave. We're studying the situation. We've had a proposal from Atletico Madrid, but that proposal was not commensurate with the player's value." So it does seem like Cavani wants out of PSG. If you put two and two together.
Absolutely. Chris, you mentioned hindsight there, and it is a wonderful thing. A player United missed out on, Erling Haaland, the 19-year-old, made his debut for Borussia Dortmund. Dave, not a bad debut, was it? And I think United, maybe looking back with a little bit of hindsight.
Yeah, he went, I think he was #1 trend, wasn't he, in the UK on Saturday, Erling Haaland. Came off the bench with Dortmund trailing 3-1 against Augsburg, scored a hat-trick to win 5-3. I've actually seen that it doesn't actually count as a hat-trick in Germany because it has to be all scored in the same half and then one after the other. So actually Jadon Sancho's goal meant that in Germany it wasn't classed as a hat-trick. But we'll forget.
It's still a hat-trick.
We'll
that's one I think that Manchester United have let go. There's no, when you look at his performances, especially from turn of the year in the Champions League and that as well, it's very difficult to get a goal scorer. He suited the mould that Man United were going after, the young one, 19-year-old. I think he actually scored his first touch in the Bundesliga at the weekend as well. There's a talented player in there, and what you will probably find now, for the transfer he went to Borussia Dortmund, somebody in the Premier League will end up paying upwards of 100 million now to bring him here. So, listen, that's the way it is right now.
Did you see his second goal?
I never seen
it. It was very Chris Boyd-esque. Yeah. one yard out, keeper's line on the ground. Tapped it in.
It's the same as
Right, let's move on. Let's get to the state of play. Keith, over to you.
Yeah, Leo midfielder Boubakary Soumaré has spoken publicly for the first time since Manchester United and Chelsea's pursuit of him was revealed. He's told L'Équipe in France that he won't be moving to England in January. Mikel Arteta insists Arsenal are in the market to bring in reinforcements during the January transfer window, but says it's too early to tell if there will be any incomings. More on that a little bit later on. Dean Smith has revealed a deal for Aston Villa to sign Genk striker Mbwana Samata is very close. Newcastle manager Steve Bruce is in talks with Inter Milan over a loan deal with option to buy for winger Valentino Lazaro. Bournemouth are in discussions with Borussia Dortmund over a deal to sign Jakob Brun-Larsen. Hull City winger Jared Bowen has been offered a new and improved contract with interested clubs forming an orderly queue. And Nottingham Forest have agreed a deal to sign Adama Diakabe on loan from Huddersfield.
Yeah, lots of you getting in touch. Matthew says it's easy to say that Fernandes is an absolute star in the Portuguese league, but the Premier League, it's a much more fast-paced game that demands a lot of stamina and legs. That's exactly what we were talking about. And strike football, say all this Fernandes talk and the need of a midfielder. What about the striker options? Could Cavani be the answer to the short term? I think he's been listening. So much more to come on Good Morning Transfers. Newcastle were hit yet again by injuries at the weekend, so will that force Steve Bruce into the market? We'll also be live to Watford. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. We're going to turn our attention to Watford now, and we've sent one of the transfer team out on the road to speak to Nigel Pearson today. Anton Tolui and his woolly hat joins us live from what looks like a very cold training ground indeed. Anton, it has been a great start for Watford under Pearson. We've seen Ignacio Picetto come and join the team. Can we expect to see any other signings though?
Well, I think Ignacio Picetto had a great debut, didn't he? But actually, at the other end of the pitch, it was him that made that fantastic goal-saving stop to preserve the 0-0 draw for Watford at the weekend against Tottenham. The big problem for Watford is, though, Ismaila Sarr. He came off with an apparent hamstring injury. And Watford, you've got to remember, joint worst scorers in the Premier League this season, and it's whether Nigel Pearson feels he needs more attacking options either out wide or up front to maybe try and bolster that. Watford, as impressive as the run they've been on, I suppose, well, you know, they're only still a point above the relegation places. You know, they may have won 3 and drawn 1 of the last 4 games, but that is still a worry. Watford aren't out of the clear yet, so it's going to be interesting to see whether the injury to Sarr or whether just the sort of lack of goals forces Pearson's hand over the next couple of weeks as well. But they have got a lot of players coming back as well, coming back from injury, like Feminir, Will Hughes, and of course Danny Welbeck. He's stepping up training as well. So we'll get an update on him from Nigel Pearson. Joe, you say it is cold. I'm actually doing this, speaking to you in front, bizarrely, rather ironically, in front of the cryotherapy unit where the players go into sub-zero temperatures. It's the most redundant bit of kit of football today. It's absolutely freezing here.
No one needs cryotherapy, Anton. Stay warm. Thank you very much for now.
Let's take a look at the weekend's treatment table. Injuries to key players over the weekend may force managers to reassess their squads with 11 days to go in this transfer window. The major one that we saw over the weekend, Marcus Rashford, a double stress fracture in his back, means at least 2 months before we see the England striker back on the pitch. That was confirmed by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer yesterday. Speaking after the game against Liverpool, Solskjaer said we might look at some short-term deals as well that could take us through to the summer. We don't desperately need a striker. If the right one is there and it fits for us, we have got players who are champing at the bit. He's just signed a new contract, but Reece James was forced off in Chelsea's defeat at Newcastle with 15 minutes remaining. He was one of Chelsea's best players before suffering the injury. Cesar Azpilicueta swapped to right back when Emerson replaced James. We'll hear from Frank Lampard this afternoon here on Sky Sports News for an update. Another game, another injury for Steve Bruce to deal with. Jetro Willems was taken off with what looked like a serious knee injury in that game against Chelsea. Matt Ritchie replaced the defender. We make it 9 players that Steve Bruce is without now. January plans have changed significantly. How important could this one be for Watford? Anton mentioned it there. They've turned their form around since Nigel Pearson was appointed due to the significant form of Ismaila Sarr, but he was substituted in the final minutes of the goalless draw with Tottenham with what looked like a hamstring problem. He was replaced by Watford's newest son, Ignacio Picetto. What does that mean for Watford's business in this transfer window? Danny Rose missed the game at Vicarage Road entirely. Jeffet Tanganga played left-back for Jose Mourinho. The manager said Rose suffered a back injury a couple of days before the game. Remember, the England defender's contract is running down. Ben Davies is also on his way back from injury too. That leaves Mourinho with even fewer options in the already stretched full-back positions. Now, he's yet to score a goal this season, but Sheffield United supporters know just how important this man is, David McGoldrick, to the way they play. Chris Wilder admitted it wasn't a good performance at Arsenal, despite coming away with a point from the Emirates. McGoldrick missed the game with a minor foot injury. Billy Sharp was given an opportunity to come on from the bench. How will that affect Sharp's future during this transfer window? And as if Liverpool's seemingly unstoppable march towards the title wasn't enough, Fabinho returned to the bench in the win over Manchester United. The midfielder has been missing since suffering an ankle injury against Napoli in the Champions League in November. Joel Matip was also back on the bench for the game. Both players will now further strengthen Jurgen Klopp's options during this window. So the weekend seems to have taken its toll on a few teams.
Yeah, it has indeed. And I want to focus just a little bit on Newcastle because, I mean, Steve Bruce must have just seen that injury and thought, what on earth is going on here? Is he the unluckiest manager? Keep down, it's a club that you know well.
Yeah.
What does he do now?
Well, you saw his face, didn't you, when the message was passed from the physio to Steve Bruce that it was a potential cruciate knee ligament injury. They're waiting on results of a scan, but obviously Jetro Willems is on a loan deal until the end of the season. I actually only interviewed him on Thursday. I was back up in Newcastle on Thursday, and we were talking about whether he's going to make that permanent. He's seen his loving life in Newcastle, hoping to impress a manager between now and the end of the season. Obviously, Matt Ritchie's been out for a while, and he's made that position his own. It looks as though he's now not going to be able to do that. You talk about the injuries as a whole, Joe, and we were just speaking off air there. We think there's 9 at the moment, but this time last week there were 14. So
things are actually looking up.
It's looking a little bit better. I mean, Jamal Lascelles came back and played at the weekend. John Joe Shelby's come back into the team and played. He played pretty much the full 90. I think he played a good 85 minutes. And Matt Ritchie came off the bench for Willems. So he's got 3 big characters, 3 big players back there. But I think what was his main issue was trying to bring in a striker and or a winger. He's now looking at the left back position because Paul Dummett's out with a grade 2 hamstring tear, and then we've got Willems on top of that as well. So that only leaves him Matt Ritchie, who's coming back from injury. So I think maybe he was looking at a striker, right winger, and I think he still is. But suddenly now his priority is to bring in a left back, left winger. So you might see Newcastle in this window with just a couple of weeks to go, trying to bring in a striker, trying to bring in a winger. We know they're in talks with Valentino Lazaro from Inter Milan, and also a left back. So it might go from what we thought was going to be a quiet window to now being a very busy one for Newcastle.
And I actually just wonder if it's maybe quite a good time to get injured. I mean, it's never a good time to get injured, but you'd rather, as a manager, know that these players are going to be out for 3 to 4 months now than 1st of February when you can't actually do anything about it. At least he's got a bit of time.
I think the biggest issue he's going to have to do, though, now you have to name a 25-man Premier League squad, so he's going to have to move people out. So someone like Willems, who's got this injury, they need to know soon the severity of it. If it is a cruciate knee ligament, he's not going to play again this season. They'll be able to remove him out of their 25-man squad and replace him with someone. But if they're unsure and they think he might be back in a couple of months, they'll want to keep him in the squad, and then you can't bring anyone in. So it really is a game of chess at the moment as to know what to do. He's not had his problems to seek, Steve Bruce, but despite all of this, he's still managing to get results, and Newcastle are climbing the table and doing unbelievably well results-wise, despite the fact they're not playing that well. So yeah, I think he'll take the injuries if the results are still going as well as what they are.
And Chris, do you have experience at all in your career of being part of a team, not necessarily being injured yourself, but seeing your teammates kind of going down injured and the impact that can have on your team for the rest of the campaign?
As you say there, it's a good time to have them, but as Keith said, when you've already identified areas that you want to strengthen, then players in other positions gets injured and stuff like that, it probably annoys you as a manager. You're having to spend your money elsewhere. I can't really remember any in my own career when you go back and say, there was a period. There probably has been, but we spoke about it last week as well. It gives youngsters an opportunity to come into the squad, and sometimes it could be the making of them. You get them in, you give them an opportunity, and you take Paul Dummett. He was up on loan at Scotland, came back down the road, and he's got himself in that team there. So it opens the door for youngsters to get in. And I'll say it again: when the English clubs are spending what they're spending on the academies, then they should have players there that they can bring in and give an opportunity to.
It's just really interesting to see. Mike Ashley was actually in Newcastle last week, which I think you're all aware, for a meeting with Steve Bruce, a transfer summit we're calling it to talk about who they're going to bring in. It was there that Bruce outlined who he would like to bring in and the positions.
That'll have changed.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if Mike Ashley has to go back again and have another chat with him. But yeah, it just seemed maybe a little bit of a wasted meeting that, because without doubt now that left back position is a priority. You cannot have one player in Matt Ritchie who's just coming back from a serious injury of his own.
He's not even a left back.
He's not even a left back, essentially playing out of position. You can't just have him for the rest of the season. So yeah, you wonder whether that is then going to have a knock-on effect in their search for a striker.
I've got a mate, Rob Clark, who stays up there. He's a left back. Steve Bruce could maybe give him a call.
What's his number?
We'll get it after the show.
Right, stay with us. Keep using that hashtag Transfer Talk. Have your say. Next up, we'll get the Pundit's Point with Chris Boyd. And plus, we will also have the very latest on Christian Eriksen's future. Hi, welcome back. It is time now for the Pundit's Point with Chris Boyd, and we wanted to reflect a little bit on Super Sunday and that Liverpool's win over Manchester United, and talk a little bit about a player that you know from Scotland, Virgil van Dijk. Of course, he signed for Celtic back in 2013. What kind of impact, Chris, did he make in the Scottish Premiership?
Oh, he was unbelievable. But you know what I will say is, Joe, it annoys me that he had to come down here and perform and show to everyone again how good a player he was. And then get that move to Liverpool. He's not changed much. He's the exact same player as what he was at Celtic, what he is right now. And it's about time that a lot of people took the Scottish game serious. And rather than that middle team as such, go and give the Scottish teams the top money that they deserve for finding these gems, because there is still, and there's players in Scotland right now, Fredo Morelos, Odsonne Edouard, and people like that, that should go for big money. But what you'll probably find is they will need to go somewhere else and improve it again. Yeah,
we'll talk a little bit in a moment about some of the players that have made the move down to England as well, but I just want to get a bit more of an insight into just what he was like to play against. How tough was he? Did you manage to score past him?
Definitely not. No, listen, for me, I think it was only one game played against him, but I think Celtic won 5-2 that day as well, a number of years ago. But he's an outstanding player, and it's no shock that he's doing what he's doing now. He's a Rolls Royce of a player. You can see he's so composed on the ball. He'll go and take it from the goalkeeper. He looks to play out, and a lot of people will say, he takes a lot of risks, but not for me. The way Liverpool play, the pace he's got, he can cover the two fullbacks when they go higher, and he's a top player, and he's now. It's no coincidence that the Dutch team have managed to turn the corner as well. Is that largely down to the former, or bringing Virgil van Dijk into the squad as well? Yeah,
let's talk about one of his teammates, Andy Robertson, of course, a good Scottish lad. Again, a player that you know from his time in Scotland. Again, did you see that he had something special?
Well, it's difficult for fullbacks in Scotland. Because when you look at him now, he's not really asked to defend a lot. He'll go forward, he gets forward, he puts balls into the box, that is a striker's dream. The thing for me, it's a fairy tale story. When you go back to the start of the last decade, he was playing with Queen's Park. It's unbelievable turnaround. To be doing what he's doing in the Premier League. Will win the Premier League this year, to top off, winning the Champions League. It's a fantastic turnaround, but again, it just shows you, when you're down and out and you think that it can't get any lower. I think that tweet that always comes out, doesn't it? I need a job. He's definitely got one now, that's for sure. But he's if there's any youngster out there that's been released, go and look at his story, go and read his story, and it's a fantastic turnaround, and what a player he is.
Yeah, John Fleck, someone that you know from Rangers, he's had such success at Sheffield United, 2 promotions in 3 seasons, twice voted their Player of the Year. What was he like to play with?
I actually felt sorry for John. When he was coming through, everybody was, he was the most talked about youngster in Scottish football, and rightly so. But when you go back to our Rangers team, he couldn't really get into it. He couldn't get a position that suited him because we were so strong and John was so young. And fair play to him, because he took the chance and leaving. He didn't want to hang around a big football club and be part of it. He wanted to go and better himself. He went and wanted to think Blackpool for a few games, and then made that move to Coventry. Got his move to Sheffield United, and let's be realistic, he has not looked back since. What a time to have probably your best season as a professional footballer this year. He's been outstanding, but it doesn't come as a surprise because you've seen, with John as a young kid, he was a talent, and it was him getting a run of games, finding a position that suited him, because usually when you're that young guy and that talented, you'll fit in. Is it in the left wing? Is it the right wing? Is it centre midfield? Is it off the strikers? He'd never really had a position that he could cement, to be his own at Rangers at the time. But that was because we had so many good players at the time, and as I said, John was so young, but he's definitely done that now, and he's thriving. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the man to try and lead Scotland to the Euros in the summer as well.
Yeah, we need someone, don't we? Anyway, what about John McGinn, receiving loads of praise, out injured at the moment, but what kind of impact has he made at Aston Villa?
Well, again, it's one of those ones that you can look to Scotland and say there's a lot of talented players up there, but obviously the Celtic thing with John didn't come around or about, and he decided to come down to Aston Villa, a huge club, and got himself promoted and hasn't looked at a place in the Premier League either.
The right move for him.
100%, and I think that's the key when you're playing. You need to find a club that suits you, and there is no doubt there's a good match with John and Aston Villa. Yes, he's out injured now, but I think the biggest compliment you can pay a player is they miss. The team misses him when he's not there, and Aston Villa is definitely the case with him right now. With John, it's a lot of energy, strength, which allows other players around him to perform. But his work rate is second to none, and he'll be a big miss for Aston Villa. And I hope he's back, fit and hopefully in time for the Euros in the summer if Scotland get there.
Yeah. What about Kieran Tierney? Of course, he's working his way back from injury. Is he someone that perhaps this time next year we'll be talking as one of these players that's come from Scotland and had a real impact in the Premier League?
I mean, Kieran Tierney's performed at the top level for Celtic, in the Scottish Premiership, but also in Europe as well. He's had a lot of injuries, but I hope for Kieran's sake that he actually gets a run in the team, because there is no doubt there's a player in there. He has shown that, as I said, in Scotland and in the European games and the few Scotland games he's played as well. But until he actually gets a run of games down here, there's always going to be the old potential one with him in terms of the English Premier League. But I'm sure if he gets himself back fit from his shoulder injury, he'll come back in and he won't look at a place in that Arsenal team either.
Yeah, Chris, that is the pundit's point. We're going to make our way back to the desk. And actually, Keith Downey, we'd like to get your perspective as well, because obviously you did a lot of work in Scotland.
Yeah.
A lot of you probably don't know, but I did work experience under this
Unlucky.
man when I was doing my journalism degree.
Things have changed.
They have changed.
The roles have reversed.
In his age.
Well, yeah, no, but we'll not go into that. But no, what we want to talk about is Virgil van Dijk, because you were there, you were working there when he signed for Celtic. And what was your impression of him?
I remember the day he signed, we got a tip-off that Celtic were to bring in this new player from Holland. I think it was Groningen he was signing from. We got a tip-off to head out to the airport to try and get some pictures of him landing. I remember we were the only camera there. I was the only reporter there, and Van Dijk arrived, and I think he was kind of surprised that there was a TV crew there to meet him, and he was this kind of like, I mean, even back then, you could see he was, the kind of guy that he was. But he had a lot more sort of skinny frame back then. And Neil Lennon at the time was bringing in a lot of players to Celtic, like Van Dijk, like Victor Wanyama, that we've seen move on. Beram Kayal was another one we've seen move on and play in the Premier League. And they were kind of unknown quantities at the time. And I think Van Dijk came over, and everyone in Scotland was a bit like, who is this guy? But even after a few weeks, you're like, he's only playing in second gear here. You could just see, he was just...
Sometimes right now, he looks as if he's still playing in second gear.
Yeah.
It's that easy for him.
Well, they were talking after the game. It was like he didn't have a drop of sweat on him when he did his post-match interview.
He definitely didn't have a drop of sweat that day I played against him.
But I mean, it's amazing to see his transformation. He came in that day, wasn't sure what he was coming to. Probably Celtic and Scotland weren't sure what they were going to get. Played unbelievably well. I remember actually Sunderland almost signed him at one point when I was obviously working up in the northeast. But I remember Sunderland came very close. I think they weren't willing to pay 10 million at the time. They were only willing to pay 7. He then went on to Southampton, as we know, and is now, as everyone agrees, the best defender in the world.
It's annoying for being involved in the Scottish game that people then have to leave there to go and prove themselves again. He's a top defender. He has been. He's the exact same defender as he was at Celtic. But you then need to go and prove yourself. Celtic should have been the ones that got that massive fee.
Yeah.
Rangers should be the ones, you know, get the massive fee for Alfredo Morelos. Celtic should get the massive fee for Odsonne Edouard. But Moussa Dembele, he's went to Lyon as well, and they'll probably talk of him coming back, going to the Premier League as well. Cut out the middleman and actually give the Scottish clubs, you know, the money they deserve for these players, because they're the ones that's doing the hard work and developing them, getting them in, going and finding them, and as I said, get some more money in the Scottish game.
Yeah, lots to debate, and there is plenty of debate on the latest episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. You can download it right now. It's on iTunes and on Spreaker. But next up here on Good Morning Transfers, we will talk more about the Scottish Premiership. Plus, does Mikel Arteta have funds to spend this month? Right, let's get the latest now on Inter Milan's pursuit of not one, not two, but three Premier League players in Christian Eriksen, Olivier Giroud and Victor Moses. Inter's chief executive has been speaking about these potential deals. Dave, bring us up to speed. What's he had to say?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on at Inter Milan, isn't there? Beppe Marotta says Inter's interest in Tottenham midfielder Christian Eriksen and Chelsea striker Olivier Giroud remains, but both deals could be affected by other things that are going on there. This is what he said. He said Eriksen is a Tottenham player whose contract expires in June. The fact of having been to dinner with his agent is legitimate, authorised by current rules, and therefore not limited. He's referring there to the picture our colleagues at Sky in Italy got of this dinner between Inter officials and the agent of Christian Eriksen. From here, he says, to say if he will arrive in January or June, there is competition. We don't know what is going to happen. So obviously Eriksen can speak to foreign clubs in this January window with a view to a pre-contract agreement for the summer. If Inter can then negotiate with Tottenham to get him out early in this January window, they can do that. He then says, I do not deny that we spoke to Giroud's entourage, and now we will make the right assessments. The two operations, this one and that of Politano, could be linked, but what does not happen today in the market can happen tomorrow. Everything can change in the matter of 24 hours with the case of Inter Milan. And we also are hearing that they would be interested as well in Victor Moses, who's on loan at Fenerbahce from Chelsea. But if they can organise to get that loan terminated and get him over to Inter Milan, they'd be interested in looking to do that as well. Lots of things going on.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit about Moses shortly and the kind of fact that Antonio Conte is clearly a big fan of him. But I just want to pick up quickly on Eriksen. I know we've spoken lots about him. Do you think there's some tactics coming into play here in terms of he's now implying there are other clubs interested in him, because before we were pretty much saying that it was just Inter Milan. The price maybe did seem a little bit low. Is this them trying to get the price up for Eriksen? Is it a bit tactical here, do we think? Potentially, but then you would think if they were willing to hold on and wait until the summer, they would have even more competition. The January window is a as we've discussed already on the show, you know, it's a difficult window for clubs to do deals. Budgets are obviously restricted as well in certain leagues. Real Madrid might have other targets in mind. Barcelona have just changed their head coach. If Eriksen was looking to move to one of those two clubs, it may be difficult to do in this January window. Yeah. So if he was to hold off until the summer, it might mean that Inter may have even more competition. Yeah. You know, Antonio Conte is a manager who is not afraid to tell the board he wants a deal to get done, and he's been speaking again of the need to make transfers at Inter Milan. So from Antonio Conte's point of view, he wants this done as soon as possible. Yeah, and from Conte's point of view, he seems to want Victor Moses and JD. They worked well together. Moses obviously impressed Conte at Chelsea. I think probably Victor Moses' most successful spell in terms of his professional career would be under Antonio Conte, and we spoke about those sort of player-coach relationships all the time and how imperative they can be in terms of turning one individual's career around. I mean, think about that 2016-2017 season where they won the Premier League, and then the following season they won the FA Cup, and I think they were runners-up as well in that 16-17 season. So it's obviously a relationship that he feels like works well for him. He probably gets the best out of Victor Moses as a coach as well. And when you combine those sort of factors, in fact, with the fact that he's probably not wanted at this moment in time with the loan moves outside at his parent club, it does make a lot of sense. We're just going to break away from the transfers at the moment because England have just won this third test against South Africa. They've won by an innings and 53 runs. It now means that England lead the series 2-1 with one test match to play. But there we go. So England have won the third test match against South Africa. Yeah, you can get reaction to that on the rest. On Sky Sports News. But another member of our transfer team is on the road this morning. Anton, looking pretty chilly at Watford. So what about Mark McAdam? He's in Bournemouth. He's been speaking to Eddie Howe this morning. And Mark, looking lovely and sunny there. We'll not tell Anton, but what has Eddie Howe had to say this morning?
I don't know what Anton's moaning about. It's absolutely freezing here, but I've taken my jacket off because I'm a real man. As you can see, I'm at the Vitality Stadium that is going to play host to a huge game on Tuesday night when Bournemouth host Brighton in the Premier League. Two sides really struggling for form at the moment. But all attention is pointed at Eddie Howe and Bournemouth. What can they do in this transfer window to try and change their fortunes? Well, the simple thing is, not a great deal. We know that at the back end of last week there was a link with Borussia Dortmund and the attacking midfielder Jacob Bruno Larsen. Eddie Howe very coy to talk about him this morning. It's my understanding that dialogue is happening between the two clubs, but a deal is a long way off at the moment. We know Bournemouth have always been active players in the January market. They spent £30 million last year. At the moment, no new signings, no one leaving as well. Eddie Howe saying he's very much focused on keeping this side in the Premier League and winning matches because it's been 10 defeats in their last 12 Premier League games. They really are struggling for form. So the Bournemouth boss focusing on matches and not transfers at the moment. As you can see, I'm here. It's very cold, but I'm enjoying myself down on the south coast.
Always enjoying yourself down there. Mark, thank you very much for now.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Mark, if you know Mark like we do, he's probably got about 4 layers on underneath that shirt. But I've got Chris, who's suitably dressed for inside. Chris, let's talk about some Scottish transfers, or potential Scottish transfers. And we'll start with Lawrence Shankland, scoring for fun in Scotland for Dundee United, as we know. Celtic watched him yesterday play against Hibs. Could you see this happening? Is this viable for Celtic to bring in someone from the Championship?
I don't know. You know, I mean, there's Celtic. They're definitely in the market for another striker. You know, they would be pleased with Lee Griffiths getting a start on Saturday and getting back in the score sheet. But I think Celtic have more or less said that they are interested. They are looking at another striker. There's Lawrence Shankland. Suit that. I'm not quite sure. There's no doubt there'll be people interested in him. Listen, he scores goals. There's no doubt about it. He scores goals for fun. But he's at a big club right now in Dundee United as well. And if they can come up, you'd expect him to go and spend again. And it'd be interesting to see how he does in the top flight. But there's no. He's going the right way about it if he's going to get a move.
Okay, that's Shankland maybe in. Jack Hendry finalising a loan move away. On to Hearts now. Aaron Hickey. It looks as though Crystal Palace now are the front runner for the 17-year-old. So much interest in this young left back. Yeah,
there is. I think he got injured at the weekend as well, so that might be a blessing in disguise for Hearts, to be honest. That he'll stay there until the end of the season. He has done well, there's no doubt about it. But as you say, he is only a young boy. I'm always one that says, stay at a club where you're going to play, you're going to get games, get 100, 150 games under your belt, then see where you are if you're going to get that move.
Yeah, okay, moving on. Greg Docherty, Rangers. It's my understanding he should become a Sunderland player in the next 48 hours. What are they getting, Sunderland?
Well, you get a hard-working midfielder. Done well on loan last year as well. He's not going to play at Rangers. I think that with Rangers, with the squad they've got, he's not going to get in. I was a bit surprised when he made that move from Hamilton to Rangers in the first place. But he's done himself no harm coming down on loan last year, doing well, and now getting that move to Sunderland would be a great opportunity because it's a massive football club.
Matty Kennedy, who's Joe's favourite, St Johnstone, pre-contract to Aberdeen in the summer. Aberdeen trying to bring him in now, Matty Kennedy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Aberdeen are trying to get this one done. Derek's had a lot of injuries. He didn't play at the weekend, I don't think either. And I think that Aberdeen would be trying to get this in, force it through and get him from St Johnstone in this window.
Busy times in Scotland. Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Keith, Chris, thank you very much. Thanks as well to Dave and to JD, as well as to Anton and to Mark, who are out on the road for us. But that is it for Good Morning Transfers. Remember, the podcast is available right now, iTunes, Spreaker and the Sky Sports website. Good Morning Transfers returns again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Transfer Talk returns in a couple of hours. That's from midday. We'll be joined by Stephen Presley. And the Transfer Show is back at 7 o'clock with Darmesh and Cavi tonight. But yeah, next up on Sky Sports News, Sue Smith and Stephen Warnock join Rob Watson on Football Centre. Remember, Dermot Gallagher will also be here later for Ref Watch.